All right, welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. So we are having this special coverage right now of Sean Diddy Combs' case. He was just in that courtroom where there was an issue, a discussion about whether or not the government violated the attorney-client privilege, violated his constitutional rights by improperly taking or photographing material from his jail cell. And at the end of the day, the judge said there is certain material that will now no longer be discussed on Friday when the issue of Sean Combs' bail comes into play. And the issue of whether or not there was an attorney-client privilege violation, that's going to take a little bit more time, could take several weeks. But in the immediate effect is that certain parts of what the government was planning to introduce or argue will not come in on Friday. Now, we are joined by Elizabeth Milner, Law and Crime's very own, who is inside that courtroom, inside that federal courtroom. Elizabeth, talk to us about what the scene was like, the atmosphere, what Sean Combs looked like. Was his family there? Because unfortunately we don't have cameras. You are our eyes and ears.
Yeah, that's right, Jesse. And of course, I brought my handy dandy notebook once again because, as you just mentioned, no electronic devices unless you have a particular permit and an order from the judge are you allowed to bring that inside federal courtroom. So we had to do it the old-fashioned way, a pen and paper and a notebook. So I actually got into courtroom or the courthouse, I should say, around 2:15, and thank goodness I did because it really paid off because it was kind of stacked as far as a lot of press trying to get inside that hearing, and I was very lucky to be able to sit inside the gallery because a lot of journalists were worried that they weren't even going to be able to make it into the hearing. The hearing was on a completely different floor than it was last time in a lot smaller of a courtroom, and really lucked out being able to sit in the gallery kind of on the right side, just like I was sitting last hearing in October. But you know, a big difference in this hearing compared to last is Diddy's family wasn't even inside the courtroom. They didn't appear inside court today, likely because this was an emergency hearing and we just got notification of it literally yesterday. So no sign of his sons, no signs of his daughters, no signs of his mother inside that courtroom hearing. But one thing that, and I guess I should say, it doesn't really surprise me as much anymore, but it is Diddy's demeanor. I was expecting, because his family wasn't here, for him to be a little more somber, a little more defeated in a way, but that is not Diddy. Literally his motto, besides being a bad boy for life, is can't stop, won't stop, and you cannot stop that confidence that he has when he appears inside the courtroom. I was very surprised to see that he had come inside. He had kind of smiled at the gallery. I felt in a way he even made eye contact with me, which was very kind of bizarre in a way, but at the same time he was just appearing as that confident Sean Diddy Combs that we have seen plenty of times in the images, of course, in the stories that we have covered prior. And again, he was an enamored figure once ago, but you know, you would think that about to be on trial for sex trafficking charges, that he would feel defeated. Being in a detention center for the last 2 months, he would feel defeated, but that was not the case. He appeared very jovial. He was very very focused in the sense of when the defense was making their arguments to the judge, Combs was sitting at the defense table nodding his head along. He was taking notes. He was passing notes to his defense attorneys. But then at the same time, you could also tell, going back to when he had first come inside that courtroom, was that I think he recognizes that a lot of people are watching him. There's never going to be a moment out of our mouths that we say Sean Combs looked defeated, because again, all eyes are on him. So he's going to make sure everyone is aware that he is in upper or higher spirits, I should say, as he's kind of battling this very heavy court case. But again, when he was inside that courtroom, he was very laser focused. He was, when the judge was asking about the notes and the whole debacle that was going on about that, Combs appeared very adamant that these were legal notes that were taken. They did violate attorney-client privilege. But again, you know, what else are we expecting from a man other than Sean Diddy Combs?
There's one thing that's so interesting about that description. Two things. One, you know, the first time we heard Sean Combs recently was on that happy birthday call from his family, and he actually sounded, on the other line, jovial. So I'm not surprised you saying that he kind of has this upbeat mentality. I am very curious about the judge's demeanor. So we were reading kind of the transcript about what the judge was saying, but in your best guess, the way the judge was responding to the prosecution, did he seem annoyed at the prosecution? Did he seem to be more aligned with the defense? Because based on the transcript, it seemed he was not only open to the defense's accusations, the defense's claims, but he seemed to side with them a little bit. What was his demeanor like?
Yeah, for sure. And you picked that up 1,000%, even from outside the courthouse. It felt that way, too. It felt like the judge was very no nonsense. The judge had a lot of follow-up questions for the government and their arguments about what kind of occurred, how it occurred, all of that sort. And so it did appear that the defense was going to get a win in this case. Obviously, we're going to have to wait and see how Friday all plays out. But I gather that the judge was very much no nonsense when it comes to kind of siding with the defense on whether or not that Fourth Amendment and that attorney-client privilege was violated. And I thought for a second there, the government didn't sound as kind of put together as they should have been, because in this case, when you're dealing with somebody like Sean Diddy Combs, you have to cross your T's, dot all your I's, and make sure your ducks are in a row. So I was actually kind of surprised at the government's arguments of everything that kind of occurred, where it was either that, you know, they didn't feel the defense needed to hear or see these types of items. They didn't feel that they needed to be in their possession. And so the judge kind of called them out on it. And I was very surprised that, you know, thinking that the defense would get a win in this argument, but we're going to continue, to wait and see how this all plays out, especially on Friday.
Yeah, it's interesting because maybe the prosecution wasn't prepared, because this was kind of an emergency hearing requested by the defense. They were probably making sense of what had happened themselves with the filter team and investigator one from the Bureau of Prisons who obtained this material from Sean Combs' jail cell. But look, interesting development. We're going to cover more on Friday. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse.
Now, again, we're going to be on Friday is when we're going to have this bail hearing, and we're going to do the same kind of coverage because I think that is going to be really interesting. I want to get some final perspective right now from Natalie Whittingham-Burrell, criminal defense attorney. Your final reaction to the day's events, and also what we can anticipate on Friday with the issue of bail.
I think that we should prepare to be surprised with bail on Friday. Because although it is more likely than not that Diddy will remain to be held, he now has an avenue for release. And my major impression here is that the prosecution made a huge mistake in intercepting that attorney-client privilege communication. They could have had that clean team do the raid and then hand over all the items to the court so the court can make a determination of what's attorney-client privilege. They didn't do that. And I think that's why Elizabeth is expressing that they were kind of caught flat-footed. They made a big strategic error here by doing that. And so I do think there will be some more ripple effects from that.
And clearly it is at least a little bit negatively impacted them going into the bail motion on Friday. Natalie Whittingham-Burrell, thank you so much for coming on. Always great seeing you.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you for having me.
Now, as I said, we're going to cover this on Friday, but before I do, I have a very special announcement for you as well. If you're looking for a deep dive on the Sean Diddy Combs case, well, guess what? You need to be subscribed to Wondery Plus, because Law&Crime is going to be launching a brand new podcast series called The Rise and Fall of Diddy. It launches on December 4th, and guess who it's hosted by? Me. Yep, very excited to be a part of it, so hopefully you can check that out. Again, on Friday is when we expect this bail motion hearing. We're going to do the same thing. We'll do live coverage, take your questions, take your thoughts. Again, thank you everybody for submitting them on YouTube. Thank you so much to my guests. Thank you to Elizabeth. We will be covering every aspect of the Sean Diddy Combs case as it progresses on our live channel here on YouTube and also our various shows. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll see you next time.